Welcome everybody to the second part of the third episode. Had to split that one up with Gustav because we wanted to wait for some announcements and also because it was very long as one episode. But now the second part is out. We talked a whole lot about the roster changes that they are making. We answered some fan questions, and then we had a little bit of fun towards the end. He asked me a few questions. I asked him a few rapid fire questions. It was pretty fun. It was pretty nice. If you enjoy this kind of content, make sure you subscribe to the channel on YouTube. That helps out a lot. You can follow the podcast on different platforms. You can leave a review. All that stuff is absolutely free and helps me out a lot. I think people can imagine the amount of effort that goes into these videos. So all that free stuff you can do to support is super appreciated. As always, not going to waste a whole lot of your time. Get into the episode. So we talked a lot now about what you need on a team, what makes a good roster, all that sort of stuff. And it's pretty public knowledge at this point that you are making big roster changes at FaZe. And it's been a topic forever. Twitch chat has been, saying that FaZe needs to make roster moves for years, I guess.
Yeah.
And if you're just looking at scrims, it looks pretty obvious that you are dropping 8C and Diggory, because they are not scrimming with you anymore, they're scrimming with other teams. So can you talk about that a little bit? I think it's going to be announced this week, but we'll just talk about it now and I'll fix that in post.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really, really hard decision. Like after PTC, you always have this talk about what do you want to do with the roster next year. We couldn't really come to an agreement about what we wanted to do because I was very back and forward, I would say. Like, did I want to make changes? Did I not want to make changes? I had to like sleep on it for a while, like spend a few weeks to figure out what I wanted to do. But we ended up deciding that Ice and Diggory is not gonna be in the team, and that is basically because, like what I said earlier, with like the talking, I don't think there was enough ideas. I think we were way too quiet on the team. Like Ice and Diggory like are insane players. It feels so weird, and I love the guys. It's also hard because Diggory might be the one that had the best PTC out of like all of us on the team. He played, I would say he played pretty well at PTC. So it might feel weird for some, but from an inside point of view, our problem last year was just that we, like as I said, we were way too quiet on the team. So like going forward next year, or like this year, we are bringing in two players that are going to be a lot more vocal. We're going to try that, where I'm still going to be the IGL on the team, but it's going to be a lot different than last year. It's going to be a lot more ideas and a lot more like flexible than last year. Like it's still me that has the voice, but it's not necessarily like 100% me anymore, right? It's like
it's a
more
conversation. It's not a monologue.
Yeah, for sure. So we're gonna try with that approach. And from scrimming with the two new players, like it's been seem like to be going like really, really well, I would say. But then again, it's dangerous taking a lot from scrims because it is not real games, and we are still not. There are only like 4 or 5 like up tier 1 teams in our scrims, so it's like you don't get punished as much as you do in real games. But it's feeling really good. A lot more consistent with the talking, which was our problem last year. Like sometimes with Ice and Diggory, like we would talk a lot and everything would go, but then other times, like in the really hard games, when you are like on an edge somewhere and you need to make a play, you have 4 eyes. It's really hard, I would say, for the IGL then to come up with a good idea. That's really when you need 4 players who can come with 4 different like opportunities to like do something, right? And last year we didn't have that. And I think this year, like those really hard games, I believe we can make more out of them. And that is where I would say that's how you win tournaments. Is like when you really get like points out of the hard games as well. Because we had a lot of 0-pointers at PTC.
Yeah.
And you don't win tournaments with that.
No. And then you had a lot of bad days too, and then you sort of come back on the last day. It's sort of the FaZe Classic where you get from 14th to 9th, but it still feels terrible because you know that if one better day, you're like a top 4 team or something.
Yeah, for sure.
That's interesting because I think a lot of people were wondering as well. So you've been the IGL for that long time now, but you took over from Fuzz initially. Is that correct?
How
I wanna sort of know how that went for you, and what makes you confident that you're just gonna continue IGLing in this team.
I mean, so this was in 2020 when I said like the team I talked about earlier, that we lacked motivation that year, and like everything was weird because everything was online. I felt that like we really did like bad that year. I think we got like maybe our best was like a fourth in 2020, like till I took over, which was PCS 2, I believe. This wasn't necessarily Fuzz's fault at all. There was like, as I said, like the motivation within the team was also a big problem. So I really felt like for us to do better, we needed like a big change within the team, right? For us to like get some new motivation. Basically, we had a big team talk. Like it was a kind of a rough one as well, I would say. Like we were going at it, and we ended up with me being swapping to me as Nigel. Like I wanted that personally, but it was hard. And then we swapped to me. We won PCS 2 like a month after. Like we played extremely well with my first PCS win, so like I was obviously very proud of myself for like taking over IGLing. The others played like it was so weird because everyone just it was like we were just like born like newly again. Like everyone played so well, like out of their mind. Like and we just won it. And then we kind of fell into like a little slop again, where I would say we fell into like it's like, oh, we won. And then we were just chilling a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I think we got like fourth or fifth again in
PCS 3.
PCS. And then we kind of wanted I don't remember what we did then, if we went back with Fuzz then as IGL. Or what we did. But then we went to Korea, and I remember I IGL'd as well. We won a week. And that obviously felt pretty good, I would say. Winning a week there, like that could have also just been the last week, and we could be the world champions, right? So that's kind of just like whatever. But then me and Fuzz from there swapped a few times back and forth. Fex joined. I think we swapped back to Fuzz again. Don't remember how we did, but we swapped back and forth because like none of them were really working extremely well, right? So, but I would say that the wins we did end up getting on our team, that was with me IGLing. While I was in the team, of course, they won so much with Fuzz IGLing before I joined, right? So I still believe in myself as a player as an IGL. Like I know how good I can do when I'm at my peak. I think in the past I was missing a lot of confidence and a lot of like as a young IGL, like I was not very mature at all. But I believe now, like I'm 23, I've matured a lot. I'm 100% certain that I can win a world championship with the right players around me if I play to my peak. So going into this next year, like getting in new players that are obviously also going to be very vocal, I don't think it's going to be a problem for me. But I'm always open to like anything that is going to make the team strong. So like if someone else is a crazy IGL and they can do better than me, like I just want to do whatever it takes to win.
Yeah.
I don't care what that is, but I think also in IGL you need to believe in yourself. So obviously I believe that I am the best IGL. Like I would say
100%.
out there, like I can agree that I'm not the best IGL in the world because I still think that Battlelands is better than me. That's just based off results and like how smart when I see what they do. I don't know how much like if some of the others help a lot as well. I think Lou is also extremely smart. But that like he is better than me at this point. But I can be better than him at my peak, but I'm currently not there. But I think except for him, I believe that I am the second best IGL without knowing the Chinese players because I have no idea about them.
You don't know what's going on there.
No.
Yeah, I think that's massive. I think confidence is like one of the biggest things in PUBG, and especially on an IGL, because there's so many situations where you don't have a good play, you have to force something, you have to be confident in your decisions, right? You can't be if there's a one player that can't doubt himself, like it's the IGL at any time. So that's good. That sounds nice. I'm excited because I think the roster on paper, even if it's not public yet, sounds absolutely insane. But we talked about this earlier, how insane rosters sometimes farm everything and sometimes they just don't work. So it's going to be super exciting to see. Cool. All right. I think it's probably a good time to go through some of the fan questions I asked on Twitter. There was a lot of people chiming in.
Yes, that's cool.
It's that's always interesting. So if you want your questions on the next episode on the podcast, feel free to put them on Twitter, everyone. And one question is something that's been talked about quite a bit, and I feel like the answer is fairly uniform. Should the smoke launcher be in competitive?
I mean, for sure. I like almost anything that is in
Ranked.
like ranked, yeah, should be in comp as well. You need to create like the same. It needs to be the same. You cannot have it like being too different from ranked to comp. It's just gonna be so bad.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I think that's a true statement, but it's also a scary statement because that would mean Tego in comp right now, right? And that would
Yeah.
be a mess, I think, with the bridges, with all the open terrain.
For sure, like that. I don't think that would work. I think the Vikendi would be better.
I think Vikendi is rough too, but
yeah, that's so many bad spots. But like
yeah.
when you play it more, you're gonna figure out all these. Like you're still finding new dips on Miramar.
Yeah.
Like it's been out for I don't know how many years now, right?
Yeah.
So it's gonna, but like they have to do something more to comp now. I think it's been the same for 4 years.
It's been
Like
too long.
whether that's like changing the rocks in Miramar or adding a new map. Like even if the map kind of sucks, like all it takes is you make a straw poll or like something, and you ask the pros what map would you prefer the most in comp, and what change would have to happen to the map in order for it to be better.
Yeah.
So you do this and that, and then they somehow compromise, and it's gonna turn out okay.
Yeah.
It's never going to be perfect. There's always going to be people complaining, and that's always how it is.
Yeah.
Like Miramar in the beginning was awful. I remember when they added Miramar, before they added like so much to it, it was also awful. But now the map I think if the map didn't have the rocks, it would be better than the Wrangle. But the rocks are there.
They are terrible. Yeah.
So they are terrible, but without that, it would really be a good map, I believe.
Yeah. I think the rocks are one of the biggest problems. I think it's so refreshing every time when I do watch parties and stuff, and the game starts on Miramar. And like phase 2, you can kind of tell where it ends. And then at some point in the day, it gets switched to Erangel. And I'm sitting there after phase 2, and I'm like, I don't really know where this goes. This is kind of exciting, this is kind of fun. It's just not the same on Miramar. And then you add on top of that, there's like so little counterplay to someone being on top of the rocks. It's just sometimes there's nothing you can do. You just completely, I think you guys have been subject of that a lot, where in northern circles, like you try to get to one of the rocks, Batulin's there first because he found a mini 8x instantly and went up there with a bike or something. You're suddenly a 3-man and you can't play this area anymore. You just have to leave. It's like you just go and wrap around the edge or something because it's so broken.
It's so broken. And the worst thing is that like whenever we see Zone 1 as pros, you have like 3 endings. Like you can already tell it's gonna end here because of the rocks. Like they're like in 99% of the cases, it's gonna end in one of those 3 places. And then what you do is you try and play for 2 of them. If you can play for 2 of those, that means in 2 out of 3 games, you're gonna have an ending where you're gonna have a good line to. If it ends on the other one, you have to do either a long rotation or send, and you're pretty fucked. But like, and it should never be like that. You should have a zone, and it should be able to end literally anywhere, wherever in that zone, right? It should be random, but it's just not, and it's just
I think
that's the thing with like Battleland's rocks is when he's on top of one of the rocks, they have access to all 3 of those endings, and not only 2 or 1 of them, because he has like the his rock is like the choke point, kind of, right?
Yeah.
And since they play Power Grid, there's so many rocks around them, and he can play there, and that's why they are so OP. Is that they have an entry to all 3 of those possible zones.
And you can't play around them because the guy doesn't even have to peek. He just has to be there. And as soon as you start a fight, he's gonna shoot you in the back, right? As soon as you get out of cover, he's gonna flush one of you. It's so hard to do anything against it. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of different things that could be done to them. I'm not super optimistic. I feel like that's not high on the list, even though it maybe should be. But yeah, I think it's an issue for sure. And I think there's those small tendencies that circles have. I feel like where they tend to go like away from towns, and they have some sort of tendencies, what they shift out, what they leave in, which are like fine if they were the only tendencies. But because of those big unplayable areas, the amount of mountains and stuff, it gets just way too predictable, and it's a little rough. Next question to sort of add to that topic is how do you prepare for a tournament? What do you do? What do you do when you know, okay, PCS finals are next week?
I mean, it's hard because like it's not like CS and these other games where you're preparing for like a 1 team at a time, right? Like you're preparing for 15 teams. But I think at least at PTC, I would say you put more time than PCS, because in PCS you kind of like maybe it's 2 or 3 different teams each PCS that I haven't really played against. All the other teams you kind of know because you played against them for I
Yeah.
don't know how many years, right? Um, so like I think you kind of try and like read the meta a little bit. Like, is there a lot of like central team, for example? I remember that's what we did in PCS 6, where we had a pretty good tournament. Was like there was a lot of Turkish teams in the region because I think that was with the like the Russian crisis where all the Russian teams weren't allowed to play.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a lot of like EMEA teams, and they tend that's like just the meta in EMEA that they all want to play center.
Mm-hmm.
So like what we did was just we would just play Edge that tournament, and same with EIQ. EIQ was like they looted Milta Power, we looted Milta. So all in the regular games, we would just come on the Edge, and we would both just have good games because all these teams would just have centered and died.
Yeah.
And so like you kind of try and read the lobby like that, like how teams like to play. But in some tournaments, it's just like it's really hard because it's just evened out as it always should be.
Yeah.
Like if a lobby is good, it's gonna be evened out with the same amount of central
Yeah.
teams as Edge teams, right? But yeah,
And
so that's
it's
kind of how we try and prepare.
there's that dynamic as well where like teams adapt to the very recent games the most. So like
Mhm.
teams see that everyone's center, and then suddenly way more people are like, okay, like Edge is all free yesterday, we should play Edge now, and then the Edge gets really stacked. Or like
Yeah.
a certain circle shifted a certain way on day one, so everyone plays for that ending on day two, even though it can still go the other way, which I find really interesting to see sometimes. Especially now as well, where it's like I'm watching games, and I'm watching games as a coach too, and I see those sort of calls being made. Let's play for the other ending because everyone's going to be playing for that ending, and it actually works out. And it's kind of funny to see a lobby sort of play itself like that. There's so many of those small dynamics going on in PUBG, I feel like.
So many mind games in this game. Like you're taking so many guesses that are just like it's like instead of taking a 50-50% guess, you're taking like a 60-40, you know?
Yeah.
Because you think it's gonna like and then like sometimes this doesn't work out. If you're a really good IGL, you can take like 65 to 35 guesses, right?
Yeah.
So that's just how it is.
It's kind of IGL'ing. It's like educated guesses. There's so many things that could happen that you're never fully confident. Like maybe in the late game, there's situations where you have all the information, but it's super rare. Yeah.
I mean, that's why like the best teams get the most info, so you don't have to take guesses and you play off info. But getting that info in high competitive lobbies where everyone is so good at shooting and so aware of like trying to make sure that the teams don't get the info, because there's also like you don't want to let a guy go up on a high ground because then he gets all the info. He reads the entire lobby. The game gets so easy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's such a good esports. It's so nice, actually. There's so much going into it.
So much going into it. Yeah, it's amazing.
Do you have any advice for new players? What do you think people should focus on when they're starting out PUBG Comp?
New players this time in PUBG Comp. Are you actually out there? I didn't know that there was actually some out there. No, but I mean, new players is hard to say. Like I was there like five years ago with everyone else. It's really hard to get into because I believe that experience in this game is more valuable than like mechanics and being talented. Just because like it's so few new players in PUBG Comp that you've had that have been like how do you say like uprising talents. Like these two guys like Silers, everyone thought he was going to be like the best. He never made it through because like he always had the shooting talent, but I guess maybe he has never really been like the best teammate or like been the smartest player, right? So I think you need to be really humble. You need to really respect your IGL. If someone is just like 10% smarter than you, really like listen to him, support him. But most of all, don't focus on your shooting part because when you're young and cracked, I promise you, it's not because you missed that one spray that you're not making it. It's because of your decision making. The shooting in this game, legit, almost doesn't matter. Like I'm telling you, it almost does not matter. Like I am not good at shooting in this game. Like people might say, "Oh, Gustav, you're good at shooting. You have had the most kills." Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But that's not why I've made it. It's legit because I very often shoot first, and if you shoot first in this game, you win your fight.
Yeah.
No matter what.
It's not you get it along the way. Like you're gonna have to play the game so much that you're gonna get decent at shooting. But it's not the quality that really defines you in most cases. But it's still what people look at. It's what it's what makes these players so hyped, and it's what gives them an ego, right? Because they're like so cracked and they hit these nutty sprays and nutty clips and stuff. But it's just not really what matters in the long run.
It's not really what makes people, I would say, like it makes them montages. There's so many players in mate scrims as well that's just playing for montages. Like these players, they have no goal, and
Yeah.
like it often pisses me off to see them go for these plays. Because is that really what they are playing the game for? Are they really playing for the montages, or
Yeah.
are they playing to make it through? But like it's still just so often I see them just focus on themselves, like to try and get these highlights. Where I'm like, bro, focus on all the other stuff. Like you have the mechanics.
Yeah.
Don't focus on that. Focus on the other stuff. And so many more of these players could make it. And we really need that in EU because like we have very, very, very few EU speaking upcoming players. There might be like I would say there's quite some Russian. Like every year you see like a few new Russian names, a few new
Yeah.
Turkish names, but you like the only new name I can think of that have really popped through in EU is Corexi.
Mm-hmm.
And you can maybe say Nixie, but he still hasn't
He hasn't
really,
done
really
it
made
yet.
it yet.
Yeah.
He hasn't. He's almost been there, but like he's also a guy that shoots a lot. And I think if he didn't focus as much as he does in his shooting and on the other stuff, like he has it. Like he
Yeah.
is a really talented player.
I think it's just hard because it becomes the thing that defines you, right? You get that constant positive backlog from outside where people are like, oh my God, you're so cracked. And then you get more Twitch viewers and people comment on your montages and you get fed that sort of, oh, like you're so good at this. And then you it's hard to not focus on it, I think.
Yeah.
But 100%, it is a big problem for a lot of young players. I wanted to ask a question. You kind of answered it already. If you think there's like unexperienced players that could pop off in 2023, because it's not an easy answer, I feel like.
Yeah. Like who I think it will be.
Yeah, someone that could pop off that people doesn't even. I don't think it has to be unexperienced, but sort of that people don't have on their radar. Maybe that people that goes a little bit unnoticed that you think has the potential to become a big name.
It's so hard because I don't really like the teams haven't formed yet 100%. Like
Yeah.
the free like the how to say like the new free agent teams because
Yeah.
there's a lot of rush things that are
There's a
happening.
lot free agents right now.
So I don't know, but I could see if like someone like Fuzz created the right team with like let's say Fuzz, Itzy, Mixie, could you be Diggory, like a team like that, or
Yeah.
like Rustama as well, that team or someone, it could really do well. But I think there are a lot of tension between EU players to a lot of players that don't want to play with each other because of this
Yeah.
and that, and it's making the teams really turn out bad. I would say, like I've obviously heard some rumors about what some of the teams are going to be,
Yeah.
and I'm saying I don't think that they are nearly as strong as they could be if people drop their like
Yeah.
ego towards who they want to play with. But it's hard because I also have players I don't want to play with, right? So it's
Yeah.
easy for me to sit here and say like I'm on FaZe, like I have Vex as my teammate. I can tell you my new two teammates, they look absolutely amazing. I'm so excited to play with them. So it's so easy for me to sit here and say this.
Exactly.
But if I had to choose a player, like I think Nixie is the easy pick though, but I just don't see like many others that I see like crazy popping off. I would like to see EB kind of get back on it again. I think he's really struggled. I think EB is one of like he's like I don't speak with him as much as I speak with many others, but he's like one of the nicest guys. Like that guy I have been like I remember the very first time that I spoke to EB when I got in Pro Hub because I always used to I was so starstruck. Because like he used to be one of the biggest streamers. And he was just so nice. Like he was so even when someone is like way worse than him and he's just so humble and good about it. And it was just a sick experience. So I would love to see EB get back up on top again. If he will, I don't know. He has struggled a lot. I think he brings a lot to the team though in terms of positivity and mindset.
It's interesting because as well he's in a team where I feel like he's got the lineup around them that could work for sure. I think Wu could definitely work out. And he said himself as well that he's maybe been too much of a team player. He's sort of he should be a little bit more selfish, sort of play his own life a little bit more and stuff. So there's definitely potential for if the team works out and he actually does maybe, make a little bit less really risky plays that could work out with the team and that kind of stuff, that there is potential that he could do much better as well. Yeah. I think it's going to be, for me at least, it feels like the wildest roster royale since a long time because so many teams kind of fell apart and there's so many free agents right now that are really, really cracked. but you just
So many good opportunities to create like crazy teams right now.
it's crazy.
It's
The pool is
uh,
really there.
mhm.
And then I think recently, for example, Polish Power sort of maybe falls apart now with Kapi leaving. Um,
I was so surprised
I
by
was
that because
really surprised too.
I actually didn't know that till
Yeah.
kind of like 2 or 3 days ago. But I mean I've known that they have had like it's been a team with a lot of like arguments. I subbed in for them as well in one tournament, PSL, where we actually
Mm-hmm.
won. I subbed in instead of Cappy. I think that was like a little 1.5 years ago. We won
Yeah,
PSL,
that's a
and I
while
just
ago.
remember there was some there was heavy arguments in Polish when I was just sitting there, not like understand. We even won that tournament, so I can
Yeah,
only imagine when they like.
when
And I
they
think
don't win. Yeah.
there was like their first win of a tournament, like in a big tournament, right? PSL. Like if they don't win, like that must have been. I'm glad I don't
Yeah.
have that team atmosphere, but it
Yeah.
gets people heated up, I guess.
It's weird because for me that's like you split up Polish Power, and I don't really see any of them getting better teams right now. That's
No,
my feeling.
I don't see either. It's so weird for me when teams when players do this because I think Cabby is like Cappy's kind of like a guy I could see pop up this year as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like Nixie, he is so good, I would say. But like then I've heard he's making a team with Jemsy,
Mm-hmm.
who has been out of the scene. Like he's not been out of the scene, but he hasn't had success in a long time, right? He
Yeah.
used to be one of the best players in Europe, and I don't know who else is going to join that team. But I just have a really hard time seeing that team do better than what Polish Power did last year.
Yeah.
And I don't see Marcelik or Norkis or I don't know much about Crunio, but I don't see any of them. So like, why not stay together? It's like maybe bystanders are also splitting up without me being sure. And
Yeah.
if they are to do that, I don't see any of those players joining another
It's so
team
hard, yeah. Because
where they are going to be better.
you're looking at that's my thought too, exactly. It's like, how do you even find a better team right now? I don't see that happening. But then you don't know what's going on in the team, right? Like you just said,
Yeah.
they were already arguing when they were winning PSL. So what the hell goes on there? And then maybe some of them aren't playing the game, others want to grind all day. There can be so much in a team that breaks it up,
Yeah.
even though you maybe don't find a better alternative. So yeah, I think it's a really weird time. It's a really exciting time because I feel like the free agent pool hasn't been this big in a long time. With some people even coming back, right? You see like a Jet Samty coming back in, and like people
Hmm.
there's a lot of people with experience that aren't the most cracked. There's a lot of cracked guys that maybe have other weaknesses, and then in the middle you have like the overpeaker players maybe, and the fellas who are like sort of in the middle of things.
Yeah.
And there's so many options, there's so many decisions, but then like you said, there's so many small issues as well that people don't make people not want to play with each other and stuff. It's a
Yeah.
weird time.
It's hard to like make the perfect team, right? And like make a team like NLT that just twist the mind, just wins everything. But like I also don't want to be too smart about Polish Power about Boston because you as you
Yeah,
said you never know what's going on within the team.
exactly.
I'm sure they have thought of this themselves. Like it's also important to be happy, right? And if you're not
Yeah,
happy playing together, like it depends on how much you want to win, right? So like for them, it's probably the right decision, but it's always going to look weird from the outside. It's like
exactly.
when we kicked Uber from the team, like one of the goats of PUBG took up there with like with PU for example, right?
Yeah,
Like how was he kicked from the team? It looks so weird, but like you never know what's going on within a team and why this is happening. So it's probably important to not like try and be too smart from an outside perspective, right?
exactly. Even though it looks bad on first glance, there's something really funny that I've noticed, which is a lot of the time when a team makes a roster change, it's very rarely the worst statistically performing player that gets kicked. It's often even sometimes that really popped off. Like you had Page top fragging PGC, and then he's the one removed from the roster. And you have other teams that have similar issues because you just don't know from the outside that they have an issue with that player, and maybe he's playing reckless, maybe he's really selfish in game. You know, maybe there's those sort of issues. But then it doesn't reflect in the stats at all. And you from the outside, you're just wondering why the hell would you kick that guy? But you have no idea what a player provides and what a player does in game if you're not on the team. So it's always really hard to talk about this stuff and think about this stuff.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
like it's
and
impossible unless you're in the team, right? Unless like something is like crazy obvious on a
yeah,
team. Like sometimes there are some that are like really obvious that this person is the worst, but it's rare.
it's rare. And then I mean, right now, for example, I feel like a lot of teams are in that position where you really want to have a team right now. You really want to be getting together, grinding scrims, getting the chemistry going, sort of establishing some patterns, right? Because whatever the regional series is going to be called, it's not far away. You don't have that much time. But then you're also sitting there wondering, who do I really want to play with, like for this whole like next year or whatever? You want to commit to something long term, so you have to sort of weigh that up, like make a team quick or make the perfect team, and it's just an impossible situation, really. Wicked. All right, I have some questions for you too. I mean, I've had quite a few questions throughout this podcast,
Okay.
but I have like a little rapid fire session.
Okay. Sounds fun.
Cool. Let's get it off. Just bang the answers out there. You know, that's the main thing. Try to not think about it too much.
Okay.
What is something you couldn't live without?
My PC.
What is something you could really live without? What's something you don't need in your life that you have in your life?
League of Legends.
We might get that answer twice. Barrel or M4?
M4.
Which map would you add to comp?
Destin. Yeah, Destin.
Damn. All right, that's a new one.
I think that map is so much fun.
If you had to go pro in another game, which one?
League of Legends, yeah.
Yeah, I thought I'd get that twice. You're pretty good at League of Legends, right? You're like playing Challenger and that kind of stuff? Or...
I don't play that much anymore, but I used to be good. I'm not good at it.
All right, we have already gone through unexperienced player that will pop off, so I'm not going to ask that here. Erangel or Miramar?
Erangel.
80 or Diggory?
80.
Your biggest flaw?
What do you mean with flaw? Like in gameplay or in like
whatever, sort of your biggest issue that you see with yourself.
Can
be in the game, can be out of game.
I think I take stuff too personal sometimes.
What's your biggest quality?
I think I'm a really good teammate.
Nice
guy, but that's maybe a little bit egoistic to say, but who knows? I think
that's okay. I think it's fair to reflect on your quality, even if you know people say ego way too quickly when someone is just confident about what they're good at, right?
Yeah.
I really like the last two questions because they sort of make you think about yourself, and I feel like it's something people don't do enough. I feel like you don't really think, oh, like what's my biggest downside? You don't really think about that in everyday life.
It's so hard to say that in yourself, right? Like being critical of yourself is always super hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the qualities I respect the most in people is if they can reflect on themselves accurately. If they can see their strengths and their weaknesses. Because there's a lot of people that can only sort of see their strengths and talk about them, and they will not like take blame for anything that they messed up. And then there's a lot of people who are on the other side of the spectrum that always like beat themselves down. So when people can sort of accurately judge themselves and sort of accurately say like, I'm good at this, but I suck at that. I think it's a really good quality to have in life.
Sure. It's very few people that can do that. Maybe like in real life, I think in esport and in competition, you kind of get forced to do it because you have to be better, right?
Yeah.
Like your teammates will tell you, but like when you're a 9-to-5 person, like you never think of that and you just end up having these horrible sides, right?
Yeah.
Because no one will ever tell you, like no one at a normal job would go in and tell you, hey, you're a dick because of this, right? Because
I've brought that sort of conversation up on the competitive Reddit and stuff, that I feel like there needs to be way more conversation in PUBG esports as well about what's good and what's bad. Because every time you talk about something that's bad, people take offense and it gets very personal and stuff. And you can't really criticize people for what you think they're doing wrong without getting into like whole like battles and arguments and stuff. When in reality, you should be talking about the good and the bad. But for me, for example, no one ever gives me the bad feedback. Like you have your
No.
fans that like what you do, and they're like, "Oh my god, great job, so good." And then you don't, the other side, like you'll see them in some Twitch chat when they don't know you're there or something, but you'll never get the direct feedback, you know?
Yeah, I mean that's like I think we didn't do that much in FaZe last year because we had like I would say like Ice and Digger are the nice guys, right? Like we didn't give each other much feedback because like some players just it comes more natural to them.
Yeah.
I think a guy like maybe like Mixi, like I haven't played on team with Mixi, but I played a lot with Mixi and I know him well. Or like a guy like Uber, for example, like they would just say stuff straight up to you if there was something, right?
Yeah.
And they would sometimes it would also be a little bit too harsh way, but you learned something. It was fucking nice. Like in the moment, it's not nice. It's never
No.
gonna be nice in the moment. But after like whether that's a month or two, it's really nice to get that feedback. I think we did that a lot in TSM 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I remember back then it was like, it was really hard because I was 20 years old and Michael was at the time I think he was 18 and
Yeah.
like Michael was like both me and him I think were very immature back then. Like you're very young and having to deal with all of these things while living in another country.
Yeah.
Like these are hard conversations. Like adults cannot even have them. Like many adults cannot
A
even give
lot
each
of
other
adults
criticism,
cannot
right?
have that talk. Yeah.
Like and you give each other very very rough criticism because you want to win, and then meanwhile you live in the same house. So
Yeah.
like you can't even go and hide in your room because like 30 minutes
Yeah.
after you see the person, right? So some days it was really hard with that, but I think it grew me a lot as a person, and I think if I was like almost in any other, if I had any other job, I wouldn't have grown the way that I have grown as a person
Yeah.
because I've been an esport and a team, right?
I agree with that 100%. I it's funny when I'll play games with my parents, you know, the people who raised me, and we'll play a card game and they'll get mad at each other because some of them is winning and the other one's losing,
Yeah.
whatever. And I'm just sitting there like, I've played so much video games, like I just don't get upset at that stuff anymore. I've just learned how to deal with it, and they somehow haven't, even though they've taught me everything.
Yeah.
It's funny that stuff. Do you think it was maybe a little bit more easy to be like that open when PUBG was like more fresh, and it was pretty obvious that a lot of like PUBG was being figured out, you know? 2019, it was still way newer. Now it's way more established. It's probably harder to tell someone who's been playing PUBG for 4 years that what they're doing sucks, right? It's way harder than it was back then. Do you think so?
Sure, like back then you were still like back then everyone at PUBG were like you were really bad. Like people were bad at the game because it
Yeah.
was new. Like always in new games, you're not gonna like the meta have not really like created itself yet, and like so it was so easy. Like every player had so many flaws. Like I was bad at so many things back then. Like nowadays, it's really harder to find, and it's also really much harder to say because like me, I am who I am as a player. For me to change after 5 years,
It's
it's way
hard.
harder than it was like when I only played for 2 years, for example, right?
Yeah.
So it's always like that. I think I have almost grown now to it's something I try a lot. It's like I don't even give players that much criticism for what I think they're bad at. Because like you're always gonna have things with your teammates. Like even Fex, who I think is like one of the best players. Like I have stuff with him where I think he's not that good at, right? And he makes these mistakes often. But I almost try and like not say it to him or something because that just who he almost is as a player for him to change it so hard. So I would much rather focus on what he's good at and try and push him to just do what he's good at because when he's doing that, he can win tournaments, right?
Yeah.
Because for changing players at this point is so hard and it's almost just who they are.
Yeah. And it's a really hard balance for me right now as well. So you're trying to coach people, but you can't just focus on their weaknesses. You have to sort of try and find a middle ground. And then some people are like more receptive to like the negative feedbacks. Other people get really put down if you're saying like, this was bad. So it's a super interesting concept. And it's something you have to be really, really good at as a player is deal with feedback. And it's something that doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. Like you just said, a lot of people in 9-to-5 jobs don't really have to learn it as much and don't really have that skill, but it's so important for esports. Ooh, all right. We have almost gotten 1.5 hours now at this point, so I think I'm confident we're going to make this 2 episodes.
All right.
It's been fantastic, Gustav.
It's been fun.
Thank you so much for your time.
You
I could go
having
on
me.
forever, but you've got scrims and I've got to get editing. I'm going to say thank you. And yeah, I can't wait to see you guys in 2023. I almost said 2022 there.
It's hard. It is hard.
It is hard, man. It's it's only been 29 days to get used to the new year. Yeah, cool. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Cole.
See you around.
Have a good go.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end. That was part 2 of episode 3 of the Hot Drop podcast. If you missed any of the earlier episodes, they are absolutely worth watching. So go check them out as well. We will have another episode come in middle of February, I would say. So maybe not exactly next week, but very, very close to the next week. With a fantastic guest as well. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you follow the podcast wherever you're enjoying it. And yeah, thanks for watching. If you want to support this kind of work, there is always all the social media stuff, liking the video, subscribing to the channel, leaving a review on the podcast, which you can do. And you can also use my creator code in game. There will be a link for that below the video. And if you are super crazy about this kind of content and you really want to give me money, then I have made a Patreon with some very slight benefits, but mainly just for people that are a little bit too crazy and want to support this. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you guys very, very soon in episode 4 of the Hot Drop.